Hey, hey, hey. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, guten tag.
Hello, humans.
Hi, this is Morning Mimosas. I am Holly,
I'm Fatu.
and we are Morning Mimosas once again, where we put value in criminal justice, promoting healing and education for our Black community. So, today, guys, we have a special treat. And I say special treat because we need more people to come on these platforms and help people with certain issues like this. But wouldn't you agree, Ms.
I
Fatu?
agree.
Um, because people are failing in their relationships and they don't have the tools to fix whatever the issues are. So we have our very, very special guest today, Miss Shamaree. She is a marriage slash family therapist turned intimacy coach slash relationship expert. And guys, I'm sorry, I'm stoked because I just can't wait to learn from her, guys. It's going to be absolutely amazing. Welcome, Miss Shamari, to Morning Mimosas.
Hello, thank you for having me.
We're so happy to have you. So we're just going to go ahead and start off. Can you tell the people a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I mean, you kind of mentioned a little bit. I am a marriage and family therapist turned intimacy coach and relationship expert, and I specialize in empowering women to be fully uninhibited and fulfilled in their intimate and sexual relationships.
Mm,
That
okay.
last part, because we've been conditioned to not be free.
Yeah, for
Oh, yeah.
sure. We we are super. I'm telling you, I'm really, really excited for that because, like I said, we don't have too many people that do this. So I'm thankful that you are someone who is educating the community on this. Um, so just starting off, when did you decide to transition? Well, not so much transition because I believe you're still a marriage and family therapist, correct?
I still am. I'm not taking therapy clients currently, but I am still a therapist.
So when did you decide that you wanted to turn into an intimacy coach slash relationship expert?
That actually came about pretty recently within the last few years, I would say. So, historically, like I love relationships. That's what I wanted to do pretty much since I was a teenager. I wanted to be a therapist. But in my own journey of searching for help, I had a difficult time. So, even as a full blown therapist, I have the resources, I know where to look, I know what questions to ask. I know all of the things, right? But I still had a very difficult time finding help. And so I did have therapists. I hired a sex coach. Like I've hired all of this help because as a sexual assault survivor, I had my own things going on. And each of those providers, they were helpful, of course, in their own ways, but none of them looked like me.
Yeah.
And that was very difficult to find, like finding someone who has the education, but then also culturally understands me as a person and why I approach things or look at things the way that I do, and just why I am the way that I am. And then also someone that you get along with because you don't get along with everyone. And so all of those layers, it made it very, very, very difficult for me. And like I said, as a full blown therapist, if I was having a hard time, I know that there's so many other people having a hard time. And with therapy, you can only see clients that reside in the same state that you hold your license. With coaching, there's no regulation. So I can see
Mm,
anyone who feels aligned, feels drawn to me, feels like I'm the one that can help them. And there's no one to tell me that I can't.
Oh, I like that. Yes,
I
it's
love
very
that.
hard. It's very difficult to find someone that you mesh well with. And I was in therapy before, and that therapist broke my trust. So I haven't even been in
Mm,
therapy for a while. And searching and trying to find someone, it is super hard.
very,
Yeah. Yeah.
very, very, very. I can
Especially
also.
ones that look like us.
Oh no,
Right.
seriously.
Because
I just.
that's my number one requirement is that they have to mirror me.
No,
Otherwise, I
seriously,
feel like they wouldn't understand.
for sure.
Right. Yeah.
I can also speak to that as well. I just found a black therapist recently, so it's been really really hard because there's not a lot of them right in that field as well. So there's also a lack of that. So
Hmm.
um, yeah,
Yeah.
it's definitely hard.
Yeah, for sure. Do you have a lot of clients that switch from the marriage relationship counseling to the intimacy, or does that go hand in hand?
So I don't personally, because I can't see anyone. If I've seen you for therapy, we can't then go to coaching or vice versa. So
Okay.
none that were with me. But I do have clients that come to me that have been in therapy before. And sometimes they're currently in therapy with maybe their partner or something, but then
Mhm.
they still want to have something that's for themselves and they're not necessarily looking for the therapy route, and they want to do coaching because it's a little bit more solution focused, a little bit more actionable, a little bit quicker, usually, too, for
Mhm.
the most part, depending on what the issues are that you're wanting to work on. So I do have people who have been in therapy, are currently in therapy, but are still seeking coaching.
I like that. I feel like it can go hand in hand.
Yes.
Hmm.
But the barriers, like with therapy, you can only see someone that's within your licensed state is very non-productive, especially because a lot of people, especially you see online, and
Hmm.
you are not able, even via telehealth, to help out when
Hmm.
people are having a hard time finding a therapist.
Right. And that was a big motivator for me because when I was doing my search, this was even pre-pandemic, right? And so at that time, telehealth wasn't as big. Like there were a
Hmm.
lot of limitations around that too. So if you live in a place where there's not a lot of people of color in general, that means that
Yeah,
the amount of people of color that are therapists is going to be this much. And
yeah.
so then on top of it, with my specific area of expertise, but also my specific area that I was struggling with was intimacy and sex. And not all therapists feel comfortable talking about
So
that.
Yeah.
it's true.
So even if I did find a therapist, they would also have to have that additional expertise and
Hmm.
education. So it was very, very difficult.
Yeah.
There weren't, I don't think, any Black therapists who specialized in sex therapy within, like, I don't know, maybe 30 to 50-mile radius of where I was at that time.
Insane.
Uh,
Wow.
yeah, and I'm not gonna drive that. Like that's ridiculous.
No.
Right.
So
No, it's very
I,
discouraging.
Very
Yeah.
disturbing.
right, right. Yeah, and some people would give up. If I didn't know what I
Hmm.
know, like I'm a therapist, so I know that that's not the case for all therapists, right?
Hmm.
But some people give up when they have a bad experience or when they're not able to find it in their first search. Some people kind of
Hmm.
go, maybe it's just
Yeah.
not for me. And I don't like I don't agree with that at all. I don't like that. I want it to become a person, a face that they can see that has the experience and the expertise. But then also I've been there, so I get it from both sides.
Hmm. What's also discouraging is that I'm not sure in my lifetime of meeting Black women, the number of us who have been sexually assaulted is
Mhm.
enormously high,
Yeah.
and or molested, which um and then to be shunned sexually even after that. So there's like concrete on top of concrete trying to get to for that sexual freedom, because it doesn't have to be uncomfortable and painful, and you can like what you like,
Right.
but it's just whew, it's very
Mhm.
sad.
Yes.
Mhm. Absolutely.
So yeah, I am also a survivor of that as well. And when I did have a Black therapist, it was a really really interesting experience. It just seemed like she didn't really care about what I was talking about. So it was really discouraging. So I never tried it again until I was assaulted again years later. But it really is a good thing, for real. For real.
Hmm.
I'm thankful for women like you who are doing this because, like I said, we need these tools in the community, and there's not too many tools like this, resources.
Hmm.
So
Mhm.
I'm really really glad.
Yeah, and
Um,
thankful, especially in our community, because um, when I think about even like in nursing situations where they're taught that Black women don't really experience pain, um, And when you combine that thought process with therapy, how can you really help me if you really think that I don't have a problem? You just medicate me,
Mhm.
which makes it worse.
Okay.
And so,
Mhm.
yeah, finding someone who doesn't just want to put you on medication is hard as well. Like, listen to
Yeah,
me, let me get it out, because getting it out could be helpful, you know?
right. For sure.
So we're gonna get into the topic of today, which is intimacy issues in your relationship.
Hmm.
Now, in us talking about that, what is the first thing that you do when you're teaching people about intimacy issues, like when you're doing your classes or however you format how you
Yeah. So,
discuss?
I mean, typically, we kind of have to define what intimacy is. And so, for me, how I in the simplest way is it's closeness. So being close or being connected, whatever that looks like for you. And there's many ways that you can feel close to someone, many different ways that you can connect to someone. So yes, I talk about sex a lot, but that's not at all that I do. It's not even most of it for the most part, because most sex problems aren't even really sex problems, they're intimacy problems.
Hmm.
And so that's why I'm an intimacy coach, not really a sex coach. But after we're able to kind of understand what it is, then it's easy to see where those disconnects may come or what those things may look like. And I try my best to provide like real world examples of it, because sometimes when we say disconnect, people, they immediately are opposed to the idea, like, oh no, like we are together all day. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you're connected.
Hmm.
Okay.
And we got to give examples so that people can understand and they can kind of see where things may be going wrong.
Hmm. What is if you can say, what is the number one thing that comes up, I guess, across the line with people? Like, is it the lack of knowledge about what intimacy is?
Hmm.
Because most people, I'm pretty sure when you say intimacy, they automatically think sex. And
Sex. Yep.
yeah.
Yeah. Most people definitely do, or at least like physical intimacy. I think it's pretty
Hmm.
clear what that is and what that looks like for most people,
Hmm.
because that's what we see. It's very obvious. But some of the other ways that you can be intimate with someone are not, less obvious. I people,
Hmm.
and it's not something that's talked about a whole lot. So like emotional intimacy, intellectual intimacy,
Mm.
and when I like to talk idea that intimacy is that closeness. So thinking about the people that are close to you, thinking about the things that you do with one person, but maybe you wouldn't do with someone else.
Hmm.
That's intimacy. So like maybe you tell your best friend things that you probably don't tell your coworkers.
Okay.
So that is a form of intimacy, being able to share those things with someone. That is what that is. And sometimes we don't necessarily make that connection.
Hmm. Yeah. I think when people are putting people in categories, in the ships, um, ship part of it, that a lot of things get missed. A number one problem could be is that a lot of people really lack the communication part of life, just
Okay.
from beginning to end. And
True.
so they're not able to communicate I guess, what their intimacy is lacking. Um,
Mhm.
most women I know when they get emotionally connected to someone, the sex part comes easier. Um, how is it that we can explain that to your partner? Like, I'm missing the emotional aspect of this. Thus, this is where the problem is coming in.
So I do talk a lot about communication tips and tricks as well, because sometimes it's not even what it is that you're trying to express, it's how you're trying to express,
Mm-hmm.
and the message is being missed. So if I'm telling you, you don't pay enough attention to me, or you're not doing these things for me, that sounds a lot different than I would love to experience this with you. Like,
Yeah.
I feel really
Mm.
connected to you when we're able to go out on dates and like just focus
Yes.
on us for a little while. I'm still telling you that this is what I want, right? But I'm not
Mm-hmm.
making it like you don't take me out. You don't ever try to give me a massage. You don't try to take things off my plate so that I can be in a good mind state to even want to be close to you. Um, that sounds like an attack. And
Mm-hmm.
people don't respond well to attacks. We get
Okay.
defensive. When we're
Yeah.
defensive, we're not thinking rationally. We're not trying to solve a problem. We're trying to protect ourselves.
Okay.
And so we have to communicate it in a way that the person can hear it and they can take it in, and it also make them want to do it. So
Mm-hmm.
if I'm telling you, I would feel a lot more free. I would feel a lot more open. I would want to share all of these things with you, and I would like if we can do this in order to get me in that space where I could feel that way.
Um, I wanna talk about makeup sets. I personally, even though I've experienced makeup sets and all of that, I sometimes think it's damaging. Um, because there's a certain passion that comes along with making up to someone, and you are exerting extra energy because you want to say I'm sorry or to make up for something. Sometimes that turns into foreplay. I'm going to argue. I'm going to become toxic for this
Mhm.
feeling. And so how do we get that feeling
Mhm.
without having to fight? Is it intimacy?
I think a little bit of it is, but then also this is where having a very high sense of self-awareness is very important. And I think that sometimes we don't, like, we do things, but we don't really know why we're doing it or what
Mm-hmm.
it is that we're trying to get. And so having awareness, you need to know yourself first. So some people that works for them, and depending on the issue, obviously, I think that is important to kind of consider too. If it's like a little argument, like you didn't wash the dishes, and I got an attitude because you didn't wash the dishes.
Mm-hmm.
I think that in that case, like it's not a high stakes issue. So if that's
Mm-hmm.
how we make up and we ignore the fact that you didn't wash the dishes afterwards, I think that's fine. But if it is a high stakes issue and we're just using it as a cover up or a way that we can feel close because we don't feel close anywhere else, I think that's when it can become troubling. So we want to make sure that we're aware of all of these variables before we utilize that as a tool.
Mm-hmm.
But for some people, it does work. Like I said, if it's a low stakes issue, I think that it can enhance things, because, like you said, the heightened emotions, we release additional hormones, like it can intensify what's going on, but we have to be aware of what we're doing and why
Mm-hmm.
we're doing it and making sure that it works for you, like, and it's actually working, not
Mm-hmm.
seemingly working.
Yeah. Yeah. I years ago lived in an apartment complex, and our upstairs neighbors, that was, I would say that that was their foreplay. But it wasn't just arguing, it was like a physical altercation, and you can hear them fighting, and then all of a
Mm,
sudden music comes on, and then and that has to be super toxic and damaging and,
Mhm.
on other levels. But most of the time they seem fine until you hear a fight, and then what's coming.
right. And that could be a kink too. So like some people they
Sure.
have like an agreement. And typically with that though, like you don't just jump into a kink. You don't just say, oh, today we gonna fight it out and then we're gonna do it. You really have to make sure that you have an agreement prior to that, you do your
Mm-hmm.
research and you know what's safe and what's not safe, and that you know what that person is consenting to versus not, and where those lines are drawn, where everyone's boundaries are. So it's definitely something you have to put effort into. If that is your kink and that's something that you guys both enjoy, I think that that's fine. But um, otherwise, usually it's not.
Yeah, damaging. Okay.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
if it's to
Yeah.
that extent where you're
Hmm.
fighting, yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
So I was researching you, and I found a TikTok of yours. I don't have it downloaded, but I wanted you to, if you don't mind, discussing the three barriers of intimacy.
Oh, there's many, 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 but I did mention one earlier, that defensiveness, right? So like I said, we when we feel like we're being attacked, we get defensive, and defensive looks different for different people. Obviously, there's different types of defense mechanisms, but anytime you feel like you have to protect yourself, now it's a you against me because I have to protect myself from you. So I don't care about solving whatever the problem is. I care about defending myself from you because you're attacking me. And so, any type of defense, whether it's the silent treatment, which I know I used to do a lot, like, don't talk to me, don't look at me. If I'm annoyed, if I'm bothered, I'm angry, I don't want nothing to do with you. But that can be bad, if we're not, obviously, if we're not communicating what's really going on. We don't solve anything by ignoring it. There's also defense mechanisms where, like projection. So I feel a certain type of way. So now I'm accusing you of feeling a certain type of way
Hmm.
and acting a certain type of way. So the defense mechanism could be many things, but that's a big one, that I think a lot of people don't necessarily realize. That they're getting defensive because they want to feel close, but being defensive prevents you from feeling close.
Yeah. Defensive. That seems
Yeah,
like
so
the
that's
go-to. It's very
definitely
easy.
oh no, go ahead.
No, I'm saying it's very easy for the defensive. I mean, I think that that's almost second nature. Somebody said something you don't like, and immediately you want to defend yourself. And then, when two people are on odds, no one is listening to anyone.
Right, right. And that's the other one too, like any deep emotion. So like anger, if you're feeling deeply sad or even deeply happy about something, your emotions can impact your ability to think clearly.
Hmm.
And so that can be another one that impacts intimacy because if I'm angry, like I said, I might not want anything to do with you, or I might take it out
Hmm.
on you. And that prevents us from being close, right? If I'm not trying to be near you, or if I'm attacking you and telling you everything that you're doing wrong, that's not going to promote us feeling close at all. So, emotions are also another one. Emotions are a great thing to have and to feel, but they cannot control everything that we do because that can be
Hmm.
detrimental.
I agree. What's the longest length of time? So, like for me, if I'm upset and I'm angry, I just have to walk away for a moment.
Hmm.
Because I know that I can say something I really don't mean, but I know it will hurt your feelings, and I don't want to do that. At this point in my life, I've agreed with me that I don't want to be like that.
Right, right.
What's the longest length of time that we should allow ourselves that window?
Oh, so that's gonna vary per person, but what I say is depending on how you are. So, like, if you know that as an individual, if I'm angry, if I'm feeling a certain type of way about something, I cannot have a conversation with you. It's not going to be a conversation.
Hmm.
If you know that about yourself, you kind of have to go based on your experience. Like, how long does it typically take for you to get over it, and not get over it in the sense that I'm going to walk away from this and not deal with it, but I'm going to walk away from this. I'm going to do what I need to do in order to get my emotions in check, and
Hmm.
when can I return to this conversation. And so typically when we're talking about communication skills and relationships, I always say that every relationship we should have a conversation about how we're going to handle things. So if I'm the type of person, I need to walk away, and I need you to understand that I'm walking away so that we don't get into a place where we
Okay.
cannot come back.
Okay.
So I need you to understand it before I do it, and then I also need to let you know that I'm doing it when I'm doing it. So, like,
Hmm.
okay, you know what? Either I have like a safe word. My husband and I, we had a safe word at one. We haven't actually had to use it since then because I think there's been like a greater understanding once you have that conversation.
Hmm.
So like we haven't actually had to utilize. We do. We have one, if we feel like we need to walk away, I could just say the word and it's understood, or he can say the word and it's understood what's happening. So it's not he's walking away because he doesn't want to hear what I have to say. He's walking away because he needs to take care of himself so that he's in a good place and that we can actually have a conversation to address whatever this issue is. So definitely having a conversation about what that looks like for every person. And okay, right now I need to go, but we're going to come back to this at the end of the night, or we're going to come back to this in 24 hours. You need to know realistically, and
Mm-hmm.
not in an avoidant type of way, but realistically how long it takes for you to work through your emotions to be in a state where you can have a productive conversation.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm taking notes.
Yeah, so am I. You see me, like, you guys see me looking down every time. I'm like,
Yeah.
seriously, I'm trying to absorb this information.
Mhm.
Because this is absolutely amazing.
Mm-hmm. But also pointing out that a lot of the information is just not in romantic settings.
Mm,
It's across the board in any type of
absolutely.
relationship, even with our parents, with our children, with our friends, co-workers, all of
Mhm.
those,
Yes.
all of anything that ends in ship.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. Yes, no, I
Mhm.
appreciate that because that's what I say too. Like some of the stuff, obviously, you probably not having sex with your kids and your parents and your friends, but the rest of the stuff applies to
Mhm.
all relationships, any
Mhm.
relationship you have with anyone in your life.
Yeah, important stuff.
Very, very, very. I am. I wish more people understood that, um, but I'm glad that there's the tools and stuff for people to eradicate that. So
Should they want to?
should they want
Um,
to? I should say.
yeah, I'm really hoping that a lot of people really are making the decision to be better human beings, and to have better relationships because it increases our quality of life. It's very discouraging when I see different things online, and the argument between the man and the woman, and the pull of control, and
Hmm.
the refuse to relinquish control, and the wanting everything but giving nothing, and that goes, of course, platonic, non-platonic relationships, but it is very exhausting,
Very exhausting.
extremely exhausting.
Mhm.
um, it's
Goodness.
disappointing,
Very.
and it makes
Yeah.
me be more encouraged to be a hermit. That's for sure.
Mm.
The hermit mentality is real over here, um, because hurt people,
Mhm.
and some people don't realize that they're hurt, and so they're inflicting their hurt on other people, some knowingly and some unknowingly, and the state of the world, of course, in its entirety is horrible. And then when
Okay.
you are in relationships with people and they should be your haven against all of that, um, when they in turn do the same thing to you, it's
Okay.
just like devastating.
Yeah.
Very.
Yeah.
That is definitely for sure.
Oh yeah, definitely. I hear all types of stuff all the time, and I'm just like, it's people are listening to this, and like people, once you hear, so I just did another podcast, and we had a conversation about the idea that you hear something a certain amount of times, it doesn't matter if it's true or not. You start to believe that it's true.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Like if
true.
it's you keep hearing the same message over and over and over, you stop questioning whether or not it's true unless you like have that super high self-awareness. You just kind of accept that this is true. So like
Mm-hmm.
this is how women are supposed to be, this is how men are supposed to be. If you want a successful relationship, this is how it has to look,
Mm-hmm.
and you kind of accept it. But I roll my eyes a lot when I when I see it. I'm just like,
Jeez.
that's not true at all. That's not how that works. But hopefully, I think that some people who do genuinely, like you said, genuinely want to become better as
Yeah.
individuals and genuinely want to have better relationships, I hope that we start speaking up more, so that some
Mm-hmm.
of those messages can be a little bit more diluted. And so we don't just accept it, because there's different messages that we can actually hear and
Yes.
see.
I agree with you. I agree.
Mm.
Um, it's kind of hard. I mean, I feel bad for those of us who haven't made the self realization. I always say it's a lack of emotional intelligence across the board. And you don't really know who you are, so you tolerate a lot under the name of this is what we're supposed to do.
Right.
Um, and then you get jaded, and then those people are then teaching other people this is how it's supposed to be, and it's just so much negativity that's being forced and not enough
Hmm.
positivity.
Okay.
Yeah.
um, all the way around the board, and not everybody wants the same type of relationship. It doesn't work for everybody. So
Exactly.
when
Right.
people are on these different podcasts or on these different postings saying that this is how it's supposed to be, it may be that way for you, but for me
Right.
it could be different, and I shouldn't force my way upon you. And we want to get into the whole polygamy thing, and how it's only normally mainly people who don't want to be a part of it are the ones who are involved in it, and then it's done incorrectly, and then that's a whole nother situation. But that also goes back to a lack of conversation skills.
Right.
Hmm.
At the core of
Right.
it, people are not having honest conversations.
No. You're not.
Hmm.
And
You're not.
that's where does anyone ever come to you for um, anything like platonic relationship advice, or is it all romantic
Mm.
relationship advice?
That's a good question.
Um, it doesn't happen that often, but I do have people who come because they notice a pattern. So, like, sometimes, most of the time, issues that you are having within your romantic relationship, you've had similar issues before with someone else in your life. But we may look at it a little bit differently, because it's like, oh, like, that's how sisters are. If we butt heads all the time, we can't communicate clearly with one another. But then when it happens in a romantic relationship, it's like, oh, I know it's not supposed to be like that here. So I'll
Mm-hmm.
get help for that here. But then you start to notice these patterns. That's not the only place that it showed up. It's probably not the first time that it showed up. People don't come to me
Mm-hmm.
because they started having an issue today. Like, no one has ever said, oh,
Okay.
today, like, we had an
Mm-hmm.
issue, I'm going to call Shamaree today. Like, that doesn't happen. Usually this has been an issue ongoing for a
Mm-hmm.
long time. And so it's probably not the first time that this has shown up, and maybe you don't see it. But I do a lot of um, work around boundaries and like how we develop different behaviors. And like, you start to like, once we outline it, you start to see like, oh, this this started with my relationship with my father. Like, this started
Yes.
with my best friend when I was 10. Like, these are
Yeah.
things that have been going on. Right.
Yeah. A lot of us, unfortunately, as Black people, a lot of our traumatic starts with being born and being raised in situations and homes that are not productive positively to us growing emotionally and mentally and any
True.
type of stability. So then it's really strange to think that once a person is 18, they should have all the tools that's going to get them through life. Um,
Hmm.
like, I'm so not a fan of kicking a kid out at 18 just because they're an adult and they can go, because just because they're numerically an adult doesn't mean mentally they are.
Exactly.
Um, and
Right.
so then on top of not really having that growth growing up, then they're forced to go out into the world where it's going to be worse because you don't have the
Mm.
tools, and you're not equipped. And that's when I always
Right.
say hurt people, and some of them don't know, because you think what's in your home is normal until you
Yeah.
meet other people and you realize, oh hell, that ain't normal. You know what I'm saying? um
Hmm.
I wish there was such a push for younger people to have to go through a course about this, whether it's high school or whether it's a course in college. Just like I wish that they taught us in high school not to pass the test and so they can get more money, but really how to balance a checkbook, how taxes work, how to survive in the world. That comes along with it, because that also forces issues when it comes to being in relationships with people, relationships
Right.
with ourselves first, and then people.
Absolutely. Yes. And I talk a lot about that too with my clients, and in my course, we talk all about that because it's really like you have to have that self awareness to know how you're interacting with other people. And then that's where that accountability comes in next. So,
Mhm.
like, once first, you might not be aware. Like you said, some people they don't know. You don't know until you know. And then once you know, that's when that accountability comes in. So, do I want to do something about this? Like, what results am I getting from this, and why? Why am I seeking this,
Mhm.
sort of thing? And then, if I do notice that I have negative patterns, because usually in most situations, unless it's an abusive situation, you are adding something to it. So, like, if there's a
Mhm.
problem and nobody's being abused, nobody's being forced, you're adding something, they're adding something that allows it to continue. So you have to have
Mhm.
that accountability for whatever your role is in it. Even if your role is this big and theirs is huge, it doesn't matter. You still have a role, and you still have the responsibility to address it if you want things to be any different.
Yeah. The accountability piece is huge because people don't
Mhm.
like to hold themselves accountable or be accountable for anything other
Mhm.
than blaming somebody else for the issue.
Right, because then you have to acknowledge that you're not always
Mhm.
right. Like,
Yeah.
sometimes it's you. I love to tell people that.
I,
Like, sometimes it's you. Like,
Yeah.
I
don't.
keep,
It's not always everybody else. It can't be. It's
Mm-mm.
not realistic. Sometimes it's me. Like, I've been the problem
Yeah.
many times before. Like,
me too.
it is what it is. Like, I've
Mhm.
done it.
I've been the drama.
Um,
Yes.
right. Like, it's okay to say that. If you're a human, then it's been you before, and it
Hmm.
probably will be you again.
Hmm.
Okay.
But excuse me. But once you realize that, you now have the power to change it.
Right. And when you know better, you have to do better. Because if
Yes.
not, then you're choosing to force your hurt and your pain on other people. And that's not fair at
Hmm.
all. Not at all.
Hmm.
Ooh, that was a good one.
Yeah. No, I absolutely love this, and I apologize for the brief stepping away. No, this has been absolutely amazing. I absolutely love this, and I just want to say thank you again for coming on here and talking to us about this. You have been truly insightful. Intimacy issues in relationships. We've been tackling this issue today, guys, and we have our special guest, Miss Shamaree, and she has been a true light for Morning Mimosas today, guys. For real. I hope you guys have taken something from this because it's been great. Seriously,
Hmm.
Fatu, you've been asking all the good questions. I feel you've been taking from me, so I don't even
My
know.
bad. My bad. I'm gonna be
No, no,
quiet.
no, you good.
I'm sip my drink.
There's nothing, ain't nothing bad about you, nothing. But no, seriously though, this has been really helpful, especially with certain things that have happened recently. So I appreciate your insight, seriously, and I'm gonna apply it.
Hmm. It's
Okay.
a if you can master, this is just my peon opinion, in my peon opinion. If you can master a relationship with you, and you can relate or master a relationship with those who you surround yourself with, mastering a relationship with your partner should be a little bit easier because you'll be used to, you know, speaking up for yourself, making, meeting halfways, because there's two different minds coming together, two different people coming together that's not the same. So there has to be
Mhm.
some meshing. And if you can't mesh in the smaller relationships, then you're not going to mesh with the relationship that really you're looking forward to and you want the most, because you're going to drive people away.
Mhm.
So, but it starts also with you. You have to master a relationship with you. Because I am a believer of, you don't go into a relationship looking for someone to make you happy. You have to be happy and they add to that happiness.
Into that.
Otherwise, it's going to cause problems.
Okay.
Mhm. Absolutely.
I'm
It
not the
definitely
expert.
does help.
I'm gonna let Shamaree say that if she's the expert.
No, I mean, I think it definitely helps because, like we mentioned before, like the same tools apply to all relationships.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're able to master those tools, if you're able to hold on to them, so even if you're not actively using them all of the time, you might only see your parents on Thanksgiving and Christmas. You might only talk to your best friend 3 times a year or whatever. But even if you have them on you. So when you're
Mm-hmm.
ready, you know where to get them. You know, you could just pull it out and you're ready. So I think it's important. And I also mentioned that too. So, of course, a lot of people come to me who are in relationships and their relationship, like romantically, is struggling. But even if you're single and you don't have any prospects on the horizon, that doesn't mean that you can't be actively working to improve your intimacy, improving
Mm-hmm.
your sex life, because you
That
can
part.
do all that by yourself. You don't
Okay.
need to have that person actively there currently in order to be working on these tools.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Holly and the deep breaths.
No, it's because like she's just hitting it on the head for me when it comes to like
Mm-hmm.
certain things. So that's why I'm just like sighing because it's like it's resonating with me. So
Mm-hmm. Confirmation.
yep.
When
Mhm.
everything aligns, you're going down the right path.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh yeah.
And the path is not going to always be easy. I think that's also what people, they may hear that but they don't accept it because they think, oh, not me. It's always going to be skip to my loo. But
Mm-hmm.
nothing comes without trials at all. And it's how you act within the trials that you will either be rewarded or denied moving forward or
Mhm.
staying stagnant and moving backwards. So and that also comes with mastering yourself. you know
Mm-hmm.
Having those and being honest. A lot of
Yeah.
people aren't honest about themselves, or not honest about intentions, whatever they are praying for or meditating for. So once you can master, that's what I mean by like mastering a relationship with yourself, being honest with you. Because if you can't be honest with you, you're not gonna be honest with anybody else.
Nope.
Mhm. Mhm.
Period.
Mhm. Yeah, I
It's
think
hard. I had to
that's
come to some
important.
hard realities about me for sure. And it hurt my feelings, but you have to accept it and move forward. Because anything for me, anything else is not reasonable. Like it's not reasonable for me to sit and sulk. And even if I'm doing that, I'm still trying to think of a way to get past it or move past it. Um, because anything else is just I've been alive for a long time, and now that I'm living, I don't want to go back to just being alive.
Mhm. Mhm. I love that.
I love that too. Don't go back.
Mm-mm.
I won't go back. Won't go back.
Yeah. And so I tell people all the time, it's definitely work. And there are going to be some difficult times and difficult things that you have to work through. And used to, I don't know if people still, but like they have this perception. They're like, oh, but it's easy for you. Like, oh, you're a therapist. Oh, you have a husband. It's like, yes, and yes, yes, I guess. But that's on paper. Like, it
Mm-hmm.
was like a whole journey that I had to go through in order to get to this point.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't always happily married. We've been married for like 3 years. Like we weren't
Mm-hmm.
always like, I have my own trauma, my own issues. Like I said, I've been the issue before. I've been the problem. I've been the creation of something, or the person who threw the gasoline on the fire. Like I've been that. So it's been a long process to get to this point. It's not that you wake up and like some people are just lucky in love. Some people are just lucky with
Mm-hmm.
relationships. Some people just know themselves. That's not the case. We all have to figure it out, and it takes some work. That's why people come to me. If it was easy, I wouldn't have a job.
Okay.
Yeah. And
People
I
would
would
just be doing.
imagine it would be doubly hard for you because how do you help people and not take on some of that energy
Hmm.
and then be
Mm-hmm.
exhausted? So we always talk about healing. What is your self-care regimen?
Yeah, I think that is important because I've had positions like as a therapist in like community health and things like that where I was drained. Like as soon as I get home from work, I would go to sleep. And at the time, my boyfriend, but he's my husband now, we were distance. Like it was like an hour and a half. He lived away and like he would work late. And I would be sleeping, like we would not talk. Our relationship was suffering because I was overworked and
Mhm.
I was drained from the work that I was doing. So it's very important for me to not feel like I have to. Well, I never feel like I have to stay in a position. So I would leave. Like if it's too much for me, if it's not working for me, and if it gets to the point where I'm not loving it, because I love to help people. That's my passion. That is my purpose. I need to be helping people. If I have the information, I want to give it. It doesn't serve a purpose staying with me. I need to share it.
Okay.
And so if it gets to a point where I hate it or I'm no longer happy with the work that I'm doing after I have a good session, if I'm still feeling drained and tired and overworked and overwhelmed, I will leave. I
Yeah.
need to cut back on my hours. I need to find a different position. I need to find something that works better for me. And then also making sure that when I'm not working, I'm really not working. Like not
Yeah.
not at all. And like it's really easy as an entrepreneur now working for myself to work all of the time. But my husband and I, we had to really set parameters. It's like, okay, we are not going to work after these hours. Like, if we are really not working, we're really not working. Like, you can respond to that email
Yeah.
tomorrow. You can respond to them tomorrow. Like, if it's life and death, they shouldn't be calling, texting you, emailing
Right.
anyway. So we really have to and devote time to doing the things that I enjoy. So like I like to dance, I like to listen to music, make sure that I still incorporate that even though I have so many things to do. Even if you're only devoting small increments of time, like 5 minutes is still 5 minutes of time that you have. People love
Mm-hmm.
to say, oh, I don't have time. I don't have time. You have time. You just have to find it and start small. Once you start, you kind of realize, oh, I like this. Like I can do this more.
Mm-hmm.
And that's important too. And I say that with relationships, but also on your own, your self care. But also, we don't have time for date night. Okay, date night doesn't have to be a whole night.
Right.
If you have 30 minutes, then you got 30 minutes. That's just what you're gonna do until you
Mm-hmm.
find more time.
Make the most of that.
Make the most
Yeah.
of it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Heavy on the boundaries
Super heavy on the
because
boundaries.
you
I
know we
love
are conditioned
boundaries.
that we have to work all the time, and when you take time off, everything else will crumble and fall. But what really crumbles and falls is us.
Hmm.
And then they just find somebody else to pick up the pieces once you're shattered. So
Literally.
I'm
Yeah.
heavy on the boundaries for that. On yeah.
Hmm. Boundaries are so important to your health, just in general. And
Mm-hmm.
then that also is important, obviously, in relationships, so that you can both, or all, however many of y'all there is, can all be in place, right? So, like, you want to
Mm-hmm.
be in the best place that is create the best relationship. So, you both need to be in a good space. Boundaries allow that. They're not like wired. Boundaries can be flexible. Like if like today, technically I don't work on the weekends, but this is small increment of time that you can
Mm-hmm.
allow. So there's flexibility, right? But boundaries are what keep you safe. They're what allow you to grow.
Yes.
Sure.
Sanity. Throw that sanity word in there too. Keeps you sane.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Oh yeah,
And always
definitely.
remember, if someone doesn't respect your boundaries, they don't need to be around as well.
That part. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
And a
you
lot
you
of
give
times
them.
they'll
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say a lot of times people initially, if they're see you having boundaries, they're automatically not going to respond well to it. That's not a reflection of you, or like maybe this is the wrong boundary to make, or maybe I need to rethink it. Maybe I can like forget about it. Like, oh, it's not that serious. But people don't like change. They don't. Like, even if it's the best change of their life, it could be the best thing in the world. but they just don't like change. So if
Mhm.
you're setting a boundary and they don't respond well, that's a normal response. If you remind them and this is happening over and over, they're violating the boundary, that's when you have to say, okay, is this helpful to me as an individual
Mhm.
or not? And if it's not, I would encourage you to reconsider the role that that person has in your life. But definitely, them reacting badly it's normal. That's probably going to happen for the most part. They might violate it a few times because, like I said, if they're used to you being a certain way or accepting certain things, and then all of a sudden, now I'm not okay with this, that is a shock for them, but they should always be understanding or try at least to be understanding if they care about
That part.
Okay. Say it again. So say it
Not
again.
she broke out in a song.
you.
Okay.
Right? If they want to be in your life. Because sometimes maybe they don't, and maybe that's why they're continuing to violate because they don't care if they're in your life or not. But that's another conversation.
Mhm.
Okay.
Said
True.
true. It's a process. It is a process. It doesn't happen overnight for sure.
Even though that's what we want, right? As humans, we want things to happen.
Well, it's instant. We want that instant gratification. We want that instant change, and it doesn't. Because, like Shamari said, what if it's been happening? Um, it's a second nature type thing. So unless you continuously are telling this person, okay, this is I don't like it. I need you to stop. I don't like it. I need you to stop. I don't even know what that length period is for everybody else. I'm a person of you show me you don't care, I will walk away. Yeah, we want things in a microwave time. That's why they
Yeah.
call them microwave marriages. You get married really quick and you think that
Ooh.
everything is supposed to be the way it's supposed to be, but it's not. It's hard work.
Oh,
And if you don't want to put in the work, you shouldn't engage into that type of relationship, platonic, non-platonic. Um, but yeah, it's if the person is used to doing things or that's their normal behavior and you're
Mhm.
asking them to change outside of their normal behavior, it's going to take a minute to get to where you need to be. So it's
Right.
patience on both sides of the spectrum.
Both sides, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think people do definitely want things to happen quickly. But like I mentioned earlier, usually this has been an ongoing pattern. If you've been in the same pattern for 30 years, thinking that is going to change because you talked to me one
It's not.
time,
ooh,
like that's not realistic. It's really not. And I will never tell you that, oh yeah, you could just do one session and your whole relationship will change. That's just not realistic. And if anybody tells you that, I'm sorry to tell you that
They're fraud.
that's a lie. That is a lie. It definitely takes time. If it took you 30 years to fall into this pattern, to maintain this pattern, we don't break patterns that easily. It's not going to
Mhm.
change in a day. It's not going to change probably in a week, a month. It's probably going to take longer than that. Unfortunately, most people don't stick it out that long, and that's why they don't know or they don't have the tools to actually impact any sort of change. And when they're not seeing that change within a week, a month, they give up.
mm-hmm.
But
That is so true. Yep, Rome wasn't built overnight. Yep.
mhm,
Was not. Was not. Mm-mm.
That is so true.
What I don't appreciate is we have the conversation and then you make the change, but then it doesn't last that long. And then you go back because you're disregarding really how I feel.
Yes.
And that will also get you cut off.
well,
Not cut
yeah,
like
you definitely
dismissed,
have
but
to
cut off.
consider why that person is. So sometimes it's just because like you revert to the pattern that you know. And sometimes it's malicious. Sometimes I'm testing you to see if you're serious about your boundaries.
Mhm.
But a lot of the times it's not. It's just this is what feels more comfortable for me. So I'm just gonna go back to what feels more comfortable for me.
Mhm.
And
Mm-hmm.
then if you're not saying anything like, hey, I thought we talked about this, like what's going on? If you don't say anything, then you are also violating your boundary. And if you don't take your boundary serious, I'm not taking, I don't care. Like I can't care
Yeah.
more than you about
Right.
your boundary.
Right.
Um, so you really have to like take into consideration, is this person doing it maliciously, but also thinking about, okay, am I taking my own boundaries seriously? Like, what is my reaction to this supposed to be, in order to stay in line with what I said that is important to me?
Mm-hmm. It is, change is hard. And even after working on you and changing for year, 2 years, 3 years, sometimes you still revert back to that old behavior because it's
Okay.
comfortable,
Mm-hmm.
especially
Right.
when stakes get higher. It's comfortable.
Yeah.
That
It's
is for
what
sure.
feels natural.
Mm-hmm. What is that? If it takes you, is it 14 or 21 days to create a habit?
So they say 21 days, if you're consistent, but sometimes it takes maybe a little bit longer than that,
Mm-hmm.
to form a new habit. To
Mm-hmm.
break a habit is way longer than that. And that's why typically, whenever you're trying to stop doing something, it's much easier to replace it rather than focusing on, I need to stop doing this,
Mm-hmm.
because it's going to be way harder just to stop doing this. But instead, if I say, okay, instead of yelling at you and cussing you out, I'm gonna walk away. So now
Yeah.
that's a new behavior for me to focus my attention on. If I just say, oh, I'm not gonna cuss you out every time, but I'm standing in your face looking at you when I'm angry, I'm probably gonna cuss you out.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you gotta
Yeah.
introduce the
Sure.
new habit instead of focusing on stopping the negative one, and it makes it a little bit faster. But still, it's gonna take some time if you're
Mm-hmm.
used to doing that same thing all of the time.
That is that. I mean, if you've been doing it for 10, it's going to take you at least 5.
Okay.
Consistent, not just 5 on and off, but you have to be consistent.
Right.
That's the key is consistency.
It is.
Consistency. People struggle with that a lot because they'll come to me. They're like, "Oh, we tried everything." Okay, well, how long have you tried those things? They're like, "Oh, well,
Since
we did
last
it for
week?
like
No.
we did it for like a week, or we did it for like a month, and nothing changed." And it's like, well, that's not long enough, honestly,
Mm-mm.
to know
Mm-mm.
if
Because it
if
takes
you've
damn near a
been
month to form that new habit anyway. And a
right.
month is at least 30 days, unless it's
Mhm.
February.
Right.
So,
Right. So, yeah, people have a hard time because they don't see those quick results. So sometimes you can set up smaller flag posts along the way, but
mhm.
sometimes it's still hard to see, like, I don't see anything happening. Just like when you're like losing weight, or like you're going to the gym and you're trying to build muscle, you see yourself every day. So it's harder to notice those smaller changes until you
Mhm.
see a big change.
Yep.
So that's just, it's the same thing. It's hard to see every on an everyday basis when you're only small things are changing.
Mhm.
Okay.
It's only when the big things change that people react. So if it takes 2 3 months before you see any big change, some people give up way before that even happens.
That I was just thinking the exact same thing, like going to the gym. I want to go in and I want to lift all of the weights and walk out looking like I want to look before I walked in. And I want to be
Right.
able to eat whatever I want to eat at the same time. It's like it's
Mhm.
so just, it's not
It's not
thing at
realistic.
all.
Yeah.
No, not at all. It's so unrealistic. So
So,
unrealistic. But yeah. And that's really how it is with a lot of things in life anyway.
Mhm.
that's true. That is very true. Well, ladies, we are at the last minute. Ms. Shamari, can you go ahead and tell the viewers where they're able to find your services if they need it?
Sure. So I spend most of my time on Instagram. So if you're looking for me online, you'll probably catch me there the most. My Instagram is Shamaree LAB. And if you go there in my bio, my link, my easy tree is there. So you see all of my links. I have freebie, I have a workbook, I have courses, and you can work with me one on one. If you want to work with me one on one, you do have to schedule a breakthrough call. It's a free 30-minute call to see if we are a good fit.
I like that.
Yes, ma'am. You
Hmm.
guys heard it here, guys. Go on to Instagram if you guys are having these issues, and she will be your your guide for that. Okay.
Mhm.
Guys,
Absolutely.
once again, Ms. Shamaree, thank you so much for coming up Morning Mimosas. You've been amazing. Ms. Fatu, I have to give you your flowers as well. I always have to give you your flowers because you're always amazing. But thank you guys for watching Morning Mimosas today. And as you guys know, we are Morning Mimosas, where we put value in criminal justice, promoting healing and education for our Black community. Ta ta.
Bye, humans.